Hi everyone, welcome to the first online session of Plastic-Free Campuses. I'm Tiara, the Plastic-Free Campus Coordinator of the Breakthrough from Plastic movement, and I'm based in Manila in the Philippines. You'll see my email there. If you have any questions afterwards, you can email me and I'll respond as soon as possible. I'll just skip this part because this is a recorded session for those who were not able to join the last sessions. You will be able to access this recording online. So just to give a brief background, the Plastic-Free Campuses movement under Breakthrough from Plastic was set to launch last February and then March, and it kept on being postponed because of COVID-19. We were supposed to have a 2-day convention here in the Philippines, and we invited campus administrators and students to introduce them to the movement and get them started on tools they could use to go plastic-free and campaign. So since we've had to postpone twice, we've moved content of the physical convention into online sessions, and we'll be continuing the online sessions for the rest of 2020. And we are converting most of the content, so you will not be missing out on anything that was supposed to happen during the convention. And it's now open to the public and anyone outside the Philippines who wants to be part. And thank you for joining the online session. The pandemic has made us reach you guys. It has opened more doors and closed a lot of doors for all of us. And I hope you and your families are staying well. And we hope that we are of help in equipping you in imagining and creating a better world, better systems for your school after this pandemic. And we hope for a better future, a change in society, and a healthier planet Earth after this. So just very quickly, our agenda for today is background on plastics and the plastic pollution problem. That's Plastics 101, an introduction to break free from plastic, an introduction to plastic-free campuses, and a briefer on plastic in the time of COVID-19. So let's start with plastic. Where did plastic come from in the first place? So the word refers to a group of synthetic materials made from hydrocarbons. They are formed by polymerization, a series of chemical reactions on organic raw material, mainly natural gas and crude oil. In various types of polymerization processes makes it possible to produce plastics with an array of properties. It can be hard, soft, opaque, transparent, flexible, or stiff. It is durable, lightweight, and easily shaped. And what makes it so wonderful and so useful is exactly what makes it very harmful as well. It persists in our environment, and it's made from molecular chains that are too resilient to biodegrade in a meaningful time frame. That also means that more than half of plastic was produced in the last 15 years, and it is this lifestyle of consumerism that has brought us here. So a brief background on the history of plastic. The massive expansion of plastic began in the 1950s with the discovery that a waste product from the petrochemical industry could be used to make plastic. And although it was already known then that plastic is harmful for the environment and human health, the petrochemicals industry took advantage of the new possibilities to turn a waste product into profit. You will see in the slide here is an excerpt from Life magazine back in 1955 about throwaway living. It highlighted how plastic is very useful in cutting down chores and giving you more time since you won't be needing to wash dishes and etc. anymore. And today, most plastic is used for packaging and single-use products. And if you try to frame the narrative and if you ask a regular person in the street, what is plastic pollution? Mostly answers would be, it's a litter problem, it's a waste problem. And most people would say that it's purely only a problem after the consumer dumps their plastic. We see it in marine pollution, we see it in bodies of animals, we see it in the seas. But the thing is, this perception is also very biased. It's industry motivated and incomplete. Over the years, there has been a gap in the coverage of plastic pollution, and companies still maintain aggressively and publicly that the consumer is at fault for plastic pollution. So what actually happens in the plastics value chain before we dispose of our plastic and it becomes pollution? And the truth is, there is a power imbalance in regulations for these companies. That's why they still are able to function the way they do right now. Each stage of the plastic life cycle actually pollutes the communities around it. And it's a widespread misconception that as long as we separate our waste into different types, as long as we segregate, we do not have to change our consumption patterns. But the reality is, it's different. A large portion of plastic waste is not recycled. Much of it is incinerated or ends up in the environment. And you will see the plastic's life cycle being filled out here. And we will learn today that plastic pollutes in every stage that it is being processed and built. We are exposed to toxic chemicals and microplastics in every stage of the plastic's life cycle, and pollutants can get into our bodies in many, many different ways. So at first, we'll start with extraction. 99% of plastic items begin life as petroleum or natural gas. When oil or gas is being extracted from the ground, toxic substances are released into the air and water. And over 170 substances used in fracking are known to cause cancer, reproductive and developmental disorders, or damage to the immune system. People living near these plants are affected by these substances. And a lot of kids are being born with leukemia, cancer, and various sorts of respiratory problems from the toxic substances being absorbed by their families. 56% of kids who live within 2 miles up to 500 feet of these facilities are more likely to get cancer. Research in the United States indicate that expectant mothers who live near fracking sites have an enhanced risk of complications during pregnancy and premature births. And this is a roundup of emissions that are treated into the air from fracking sites and extraction sites and possible health effects that come with it. And next, after extracting natural gas, we move on to refining plastic, refining gas into plastic, and plastic production. And countless billion of plastic pellets are used each year to make nearly all of our plastic products. So plastic pellets is the raw product that's being melted into plastic that we have today in our homes. These small circles that are sometimes called nurdles are a massive source of plastic pollution that escape into the environment before they have a chance to even be molded into useful shape. Transporting and handling plastic resin and pellets run without regulation, giving companies the ability to be hasty and irresponsible in dealing with transport and residue that overflows in the oceans. These factories also tend to be located in low-income communities who bear the greatest risk of disease resulting from exposure to plastic byproduct pollutants. Next, we go into consumers. Hold on. Well, the food industry is a big user of plastic, and 10 to 15 years of this lifestyle have made all the pollution that we have now. But what lifestyle am I talking about? Towards the end of the 20th century, life got busier, employment levels rose, cities grew bigger, and the numbers of commuters swelled. Families had even less time for cooking, gardening, or housework. Freezers and microwaves became a staple appliance for middle-class homes, and fresh home-cooked meals prepared from fresh ingredients have been replaced with pre-cooked meals bought from the supermarket. This convenience lifestyle could be equated to a throwaway lifestyle or throwaway culture, where we got used to using things once and then throwing them away. The throwaway lifestyle was a sign of modernity. This was a good indicator that you are living in a capitalist economy, that your economy is progressive, and single-use products have become that symbol of that kind of lifestyle. This convenience lifestyle was made possible by single-use plastic. And such attitudes are in the core of popular culture today. It has made its way into our TV screens, celebrities, TV protagonists grasping a cup of coffee on their way to work. These images spread across the globe. A lot of celebrities don't even know that they're promoting the single-use plastic in their advertisements when they're holding a plastic bottle. And in poor regions, throwaway plastic is seen as prestigious and are used en masse. Corporations actively encourage and support such trends, of course. And in developing countries, consumer product giants supply their products in sachets to gain market share. Shampoo, detergent, soy sauce are sold in small sealed multi-layered packets called sachets. The suppliers argue that this makes it possible for low-income consumers to afford such products. But these are sold in places where they do not have funding or facilities to even process this packaging after it's used. We do not have proper disposal systems for these kinds of packaging. And one example is here in the Philippines, in my hometown and home country. It has become a vehicle for globalization, these sachets, and it's an epitome of unregulated capitalism. Even for the conscious citizen, even for us, plastic is almost unavoidable, and living successfully plastic-free requires a certain amount of access and privilege that is enjoyed by very few. But we argue that this is non-essential. Before, food and drinks came in bulk. Packaging and bottles could be reused or returned. The greengrocer sold loose vegetables, and the butcher wrapped meat in greaseproof paper. Milk came in returnable glass bottles delivered to our doorsteps. Other bottles were washed and reused or melted down to make new bottles. Now, all these items come cocooned in cellophane or encased in PET. What about plastics and health? An array of chemicals is added to the base plastic to give it desirable characteristics. But these chemicals are hazardous to health, and they accumulate in indoor air and household dust. Many of these additives gradually escape and accumulate in food, indoor air, and household dust. A US study suggests that younger children who always eat school lunches are more exposed to phthalates, a plasticizer used in food containers, than those who never do so. Research in Germany also have found that children are especially exposed to plasticizers that may harm their reproductive health. These plasticizers, again, are of particular concern because they are known to be endocrine disruptors. A study of blood of pregnant Americans detected an average of 56 different industrial chemicals, many originating from plastic products. A study by the University of Newcastle in Australia as well estimates that people may ingest up to 5 grams of plastic every week, the size of a credit card. And we have an infographic here on a study that found that 259 bottles from 11 brands along 9 countries all had varying amounts of microplastic in their water. The possible effects of microplastics on the human body are still largely unresearched. We are still scratching the surface on these studies that are recently emerging over the past couple of years, but it is known that plastics can get into the body when we eat and drink. Many of the garments that we wear as well every day are made in part or entirely out of polymers. Consumers do not know that terms like polyamide, polyester, acrylic, and nylon actually refer to synthetic fibers, and it gives us a chance to inhale these fibers when we use them, when we put them in our laundry. And for consumers, it's also virtually impossible to identify chemicals that products contain. Information simply gets lost on the way through a long and winding supply chain, or is often deliberately hidden by manufacturers. A general principle is that what goes in at one point comes out at the other. What goes in at one point through extraction and refining this plastic comes out at the other at the point of consumption and at the point of disposal. And this is a roundup of the emissions and possible health effects at the point of sale or at the consumer point of plastic or the plastics value chain. Next is the waste industry. The fact is, a lot of waste coming from the Western countries are actually shipped off to Southeast Asian countries or poorer countries that are paid off to recycle their waste. And to add to that, consumer brands are aggressively opening markets in new regions such as Asia, Africa, South America, being fully aware that these regions do not have the proper disposal systems or infrastructure to actually handle these packaging. They lag far behind most countries in the global north. And this is on the right, you will see a picture of a material recovery facility in the US that have admittedly said that they ship off some items, most items that they can't recycle off to other countries. And on the left is pictures from my home country, the Philippines, being polluted by plastic all over in our rivers and our oceans. Now we'll discuss the myth of recycling. Only 9% of all plastic ever discarded since the 1950s has been recycled. Every time plastic is recycled, it also degrades in quality, which means most of the time you can only recycle plastic once. And of the 9% recycle, only 2% are effectively recycled. That means only 2% are upcycled or made into something better. Most of the time, it's only downcycled into something worse, such as PET bottles being recycled into a plastic bag. And a plastic bag inevitably cannot be recycled again. It cannot be processed again. And these recycled bags will more or less still end up in the environment in landfills or incinerators or as microplastic in our environment. 91% of all plastic that's ever been made has not been recycled. And this is a roundup of emissions and possible health effects around the waste industry. That includes transport of recycled materials from one country to another, up to the emissions when it is being handled by incinerators or recycling factories. Melting plastic releases heavy metals and dioxins into our bodies as well, making these facilities just as dangerous as the other facilities. And as plastic lies in landfills or is washed upon beaches, it releases methane or ethylene, greenhouse gases that are known to exacerbate climate change. More than that, these plastics that are dumped are also reduced into microplastic or nanoplastic if it is incinerated. And plastic waste and microplastics floating in the world's oceans have been a much discussed problem. It's been a trend and it's been reaching mainstream media for the past years. But few realize that plastic pollution is much more worse than what we know now. It can also be polluting soil that we have. It can be between 4 and 23 times higher than the seas. Microplastics change the structure of our ecosystems in the sea and also the structure of our soil, as well as the habitat of living organisms that are important for maintaining soil fertility, such as microorganisms and worms. Worldwide, several 100,000 tons of microplastics are spread on the soil through the application of sewage sludge as fertilizer. Sludge comes from treating wastewater from industry and urban areas. And in the struggle to manage the ever-increasing amount of plastic waste, cities and governments are resorting to incineration, but this merely shifts the problem to somewhere else, from the landfill to the air. Emissions from incinerators include dioxins and metals, again, such as mercury, lead, and cadmium. Open burning is also more problematic because in this case, there's no regulation and there's no facility to enclose burning. In developing countries, this is mostly the case because we do not have access to organized waste management. And this is another roundup of emissions and possible health effects in the stage of dumping and burning. And we can conclude now that we as a species are drowning and are contaminated with plastic, and not just directly by eating fish that have ingested plastic, because plastic pollutes at every stage of its life cycle, from when the oil and gas are extracted to produce plastic, all the way to the end of life when plastic just sits in a landfill or in an incinerator in the ocean, when it's littered or downcycled and burned. And you can never solve the plastics issue just by dealing with it as a waste issue. We keep on cleaning up our beaches and our rivers every year, but plastic just keeps on washing up on the tides, on the coasts, just back at it again. And every year we just keep on cleaning it up, but we can't be doing cleanups forever. So we use this metaphor, we love using this metaphor or symbolism of a bathtub overflowing with water. Now, what do you do with a bathtub overflowing with water? You don't just use a spoon to scoop out the overflowing water. You have to turn off the tap. We can't keep on cleaning up after plastic if the tap of plastic is still going and going and going, ever producing with nowhere to go, because this packaging is unmanageable in the first place. So we have to ask the question, who is making plastic and why? And the good thing is, these plastic manufacturers and petrochemical companies are increasingly becoming nervous about the growing war on plastics. And let's just say a group of people have said enough is enough, and that these plastic producers have to be held accountable for the waste that they do. It cannot be paid for by taxpayers. All of these years, it has been blamed on the consumers, and it has been taxpayers and taxpayer money who have been taking the blame, taking the paying to get this packaging managed, when it's supposed to be these companies who are making this packaging, this unmanageable packaging in the first place, to be held liable. And that's when Breakthrough from Plastic started. 3 years ago, groups all over the world working at different stages of the plastics life cycle have come together under the same banner to work towards the same vision. And that goal is to achieve fundamental change by tackling pollution along the whole plastics value chain, focusing on prevention rather than cure and advancing lasting solutions. The global Breakthrough from Plastic movement holds consumer goods responsible and plastic producers accountable for the waste that they generate, and champions zero waste communities and lifestyles. Over 2,000 organizations to date and thousands of individuals have joined this movement. And how do we solve plastic pollution? It is through systemic change. We need urgent and drastic reductions in plastic production and consumption and regulation at the local, national, and global level. Solutions to the plastic crisis need to focus on preventing more than curing the plastic problem, implementing and supporting zero waste communities and cities, and alternative delivery systems and reusable products. Governments as well need to hold companies accountable that are currently contributing to and profiting from the plastic crisis. And citizens need to demand real action and solutions from their policymakers to keep our ecosystems and bodies free from plastics and their toxic additives. This is an excerpt from the Breakthrough from Plastic vision statement crafted 3 years ago, when these groups first met to talk about plastic pollution and how they will win this problem. We believe in a world where the land, sky, oceans, and water are home to an abundance of life, not an abundance of plastic, and where the principles of environmental justice, social justice, public health, and human rights lead government policy, not the demands of elite and corporations. This is a future we are creating together. And this is a growing movement that exposes plastic, again, as a systemic problem that needs to be tackled at the source. These groups are standing up to plastic and the plastics industry and are calling for transparency, accountability, and action. And this brings us to plastic-free campuses. By harnessing the power of both educational institutions and individual students, the Plastic-Free Campus program aims to help schools and universities worldwide move away from single-use plastic, implement alternative systems on campus, and shift the narrative on plastic pollution. And why do we care so much about campuses? Schools and universities play a big role in shaping the future of the youth and have a direct impact in developing their knowledge, lifestyles, and worldviews. And this is the youth that's leading our climate protests. This is the youth that are the frontliners of the future. This movement sprouted from the fundamental idea that educational institutions can set the standard for institutions at large. Solutions implemented at the campus level can be replicated at county, state, city, and country levels. At the same time, it has been youth movements throughout history that have been crucial in sparking radical societal change. Students have been at the forefront of the most social movements that includes the Tiananmen Square protests in China, to the Vietnam War protests in the US, the civil rights movement, and more recently, it is the youth that have been leading the climate change movement and more fighting for their immediate future. And the plastic-free campuses gives them the network, and it is the movement of global globally of schools and students going plastic free. It's an avenue for them to share their own knowledge and discussions through groups, online sessions, and focus groups. And it can be joined by schools that are already plastic free, administrators who want to get there and be on board the journey with us, and students who want to campaign for this in their school. You can also be a parent, an alumnus, or a teacher, and you can join us. It also serves as a resource hub for plastic-free tools. You can explore the website for this. And this is an example. We have the campus blueprint for administrators up there. And this is how we consider a campus plastic-free. Most of these steps include doing a waste audit in your school to determine where plastic is coming from, and it usually comes from cafeterias more than anything. And it includes assessing your policies in procuring plastic, making an announcement to get everyone on board, and incorporating this into your curriculum. Now, this definitely isn't a linear process, even if we illustrated this in a step-by-step process here. It is a journey, and it's an evolving journey, as everyone usually points out. All these administrators who are already there are still working on their footprint and are still working on this journey with their students. And we also offer an individual action plan for campuses or students in campuses that want to campaign or lobby for this movement in their school. You can see plastic-free events there, plastic-free tools, etc. for you to use. Above that, we also give microgrants to students, schools, and organizations who would like to do initiatives and projects to go plastic-free. This includes doing a campaign, doing an event, doing a screening of Story of Plastic, for example, if you need funding for that. It includes if you want to make a conference for your school to invite speakers in, etc. This is one of the, in the picture, this is one of the organizations that we gave funding to, who held a zero waste conference in Dumaguete City in the Philippines. And just to give you a background, this is the steering committee of the Plastic Free Campuses movement. We're made of different organizations from all around the world, in the US, in Europe, in Latin America, in China, in the Philippines, all over Asia. And now it brings us to breaking free from plastic at the time of COVID-19. This is, of course, a global problem. After the pandemic, we are still faced with our climate problem. And this is to clear up that we are still supporting reusables. Medical experts are on the record explaining that soap and hot water are effective at killing coronavirus on reusable items. If accessible, dishwashers are more effective than hand washing because of the added benefit of high temperature and prolonged washing. Single-use disposable items are not safer than properly washed reusables. In fact, it can even be more dangerous as they can harbor viruses in the process of transporting when they are exposed in manufacturing, transport, and storage processes leading up to our eventual use. And counter to what the plastic industry is saying or wants us to believe, the coronavirus also survives in transmittable form on all surfaces that includes plastic. A new study in the New England Journal of Medicine has indicated that the virus could be stable in plastic surfaces for as long as 2 to 3 days. And apart from that, the coronavirus has also taught all of us, not just us as a movement, but us globally, to look beyond our own lives, our own social circles, and countries. It has shown us how interconnected we all are and has had us reflect about how reliant we are on one another. It has made us aware of the importance of supporting the most vulnerable in our communities while witnessing the heightened importance of our fragile food systems, and has also exposed our precarious over-reliance on large corporations. A recent study from 2 weeks ago states that 41% of people are starting to think that local is the way to go. We have to focus on supporting our local businesses. So thank you for joining our online session for today. I hope you learned a lot, and if you need to ask any questions for me, please email tiara@breakfreefromplastic.com. These are some helpful links that I will put in the description box. A lot of the info that I got from here is from Story of Plastic and Plastic Atlas. So Plastic Atlas is a free downloadable book that contains all the data on plastic from the recent years. Um, Also, Story of Plastic has recently premiered last April 22, and there are a lot of virtual screenings online available for you to take part of from all around the world. Most screenings also have a panel for you to ask questions. Story of Plastic greatly and in-depthly uh, explains the plastics value chain and how interdependent these chains are to each other and how damaging they are to communities. If you also need an article on the reusables in time of COVID-19, I'm also attaching a link there to Upstream Solutions article on it. And if you're interested, we also have plastic-free campuses online sessions for the rest of May. The next one will be on May 14th and 15th. Your school's journey to a plastic-free campus is for administrators, especially who want to build a plastic-free campus. We are featuring Plan, who assesses universities in the US. We will be given an overview of how they do this. And we will also be featuring a plastic-free campus for each session. So for May 14th, we will be featuring Dr. Betty McCann of Suleiman University in the Philippines. And in May 15th, we will be featuring Jan Dijkstra from Geneva in Switzerland. These are both plastic-free schools. And on May 20th and 29th, that is geared for students who want to campaign for this in your school. Well, thanks everyone. If you want to learn more, you can go to bit.ly/plastic-free campuses. We are under renovation right now, but you can still access that website. And I will be emailing everyone once the new website is ready. If you want to learn more about Break Free from Plastic, you can also go to breakfreefromplastic.org. And you can also email me again at tiara@breakfreefromplastic.org for any kind of support or questions that you might have. Thanks everyone. Keep safe.